Yeah, I'm actually at home today because we've got my little boy's Christmas play at school shortly, so we've got to
That time
head
of
down
year.
to
Yeah,
catch those that time of year.
I'm gonna be dragged along to a couple of those, I think, where I am as well.
Where
But
where are
anyway,
you? Are you
so
Hong Kong or
no, we moved back to the UK last year.
right?
So I'm in the south around the New Forest in a little village,
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah,
enjoying donkeys and horses wandering around and
yeah,
that sort of thing,
yeah,
which is
yeah,
a bit of a
yeah,
change from Hong Kong. Yeah.
yeah. I can imagine. Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but listen, Mac, I'm going to kick off because we're limited to
yeah,
40 minutes on the Zoom, which is
yeah,
actually good. I think I like to keep things short and sweet.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But so I'm just indulge me a sec. I'm just going to kind of go over your little bit of for people listening, where you've been and what you've done. So you've kind of been a bit of everything. You've kind of been a marketing guy, you've been a freelance journo for a bit. You've lived in Lima in Peru and you did some kind of consulting for a tourism organization there or something
That's
before leaping out onto your
yeah.
entrepreneurial journey where you kind of you were the founder of something called outbounding.org, which I think still exists, but probably
It's
isn't
still
as
there.
busy
Yeah,
as your new venture or the one you're probably spending more time
yeah,
on at the moment, which is Horizon Guides,
yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
which is, as far as I can tell, and I remember getting a bit confused about this the last time we spoke, but it's kind of the mission is to promote the unsung destinations of the world, essentially. And the business model is to do that and to get sponsors for those kind of guides and that content for the lesser known places or the less visited places.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I'll hand over to you to kind of
No,
give
no,
a
you've got
brief
it.
description. Hmm.
You've got it. You've pretty much got it. It depends which way you attack the angle, because really the mission. So we come at this from a marketing background, really. So you got it absolutely right. I started out originally trying to become a travel writer, failing miserably, getting into to marketing with tourism, tour operators, and then from there going into sort of marketing consultancy. And this was kind of at the time when this whole idea of content marketing was kicking off.
This is about
Um,
15 years ago or more.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah. Um, so there were lots of things happening, like in the way that search worked and what Google was looking for, and I was just happened to be around, and I was talking the language of 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 it's a horrible word, but content rather than the other stuff that was happening. Um, so coming in at that time was quite good for me, from a more of a journalistic media publishing background. Um, what I quickly realized was actually this mantra, um, that still exists now. People say that every um, business needs to be a media business. Every company needs to be a publishing company.
Mm.
That's how marketing works, right? And couldn't disagree with that anymore. It's complete nonsense because 99% of ordinary companies are just ordinary companies. They're busy running their businesses, doing what they exist to do. And if you try and tell them that they've got to be doing media creation and publishing, all they're going to do is do a bad job of it. And that's basically what has happened in a nutshell over the last 10 years. There's a lovely phrase called the enshitification of everything. And this is a major part of it, right? We've been swamped by just shitty attempts at I mean, it doesn't even do justice to the word, but like publishing, it's not
Mm.
publishing, it's churning out crap, right? Um, and marketers and marketing and Google, ultimately, the people that create these ecosystems, um, are responsible for all of that. And so, what I kind of we realized, was that actually we could do, like, becoming a publisher ourselves rather than doing it on behalf of travel for travel companies. We would just do it ourselves. We would commission travel writers, get them to produce guides, interesting articles and full-length guides on all sorts of. Our sort of idea was that we could kind of produce the way we described it to people was we want to do a Lonely Planet type product, but not for destinations, because we're never going to be able to do a guide to Nepal, but we could do a guide to trekking in Nepal, right? So it's like a Lonely Planet level production for an experience or an activity. And it's all stemmed from there, really. So that's kind of what our focus has been. And that kind of lends itself to the interesting, like we sort of specialize with the interesting smaller companies that are doing cool stuff. But because of all of that, they find it very hard to market themselves. And just telling them you've got to become a media company, you've got to become a publishing company, just is not remotely helpful for anyone. So
a lot of this, and this also kind of gets down to this point. I just read your Medium piece, which again is a few years old, so I'll be interested if this is kind of still relevant, but about demand capture versus demand generation. Your point being that a lot of the stuff that's out there is about capturing pre-existing demand. People want to go to the Machu Picchu in Peru, and so you generate content and all these, and you just get this content is commoditized for these particular niches that are just oversubscribed. Exactly. Whereas Horizons Guides is meant to actually generate demand and expose people to the other side of travel or other places that they haven't yet heard about. Is that still kind of what you're doing?
Yeah, pretty much. So, like, not in any kind of noble crusade kind of way. Like, we just focus. There's no point in us. We're very small. We did raise some money, so we were able to invest money. But we've always been small. We've always been under the radar, but there's no point in us trying to. I will never have enough clout and authority or whatever to dominate like destination level keywords or search or product or anything like that. But what we can do and what we do really well is the kind of more niche, interesting stuff around the edges. So we do, but yeah, so like we get lots of traffic. For example, we get lots of people coming in looking for treks to Machu Picchu. And the crux of our page, the crux of our recommendation on that page is actually like, you probably know about the Inca Trail, but you probably don't know about these other amazing experiences. And actually, like, you could almost go away from Machu Picchu and the Cusco region. There's all sorts of other really interesting places in Peru that you could go and check out. So we have all of this kind of stuff. And then we have the partners who have the product, the supply, the sorts of trips that go alongside all of that. And the business model is really simple. Like we do cost per click advertising, we do cost per lead advertising. So our partners pay us either for traffic or for inquiries.
Okay, so it's all online. You're not doing print guidebooks or anything like that.
We did have a diversion into print. Sort of pre-COVID, but that was one of the many things that we had to get rid of, and never really had the logic to come back to it. So yeah, it's 100% online.
And I mean, the whole demand generation thing I find interesting as a kind of a pseudo entrepreneur myself. It's like, how do you get people interested in a place that they've never heard of before, or that they, I think you mentioned in your Medium piece, or I saw somebody say something like, these guys want to go there because their auntie went there or their friend went there and they recommended it, and they got these kind of word of mouth recommendations, and they don't want to do something that's too off the track because it'll make them look a bit weird or whatever. They're just so that, I mean, is that the core of your challenge, and how do you kind of solve that, or are there other ways around it?
Well, so there's two things, and the first thing is kind of our editorial approach, and that is to be blisteringly honest, and like
Hmm.
the way that we think we can sort of stand ourselves out a little bit is by it's a shame that this needs to be said, but just by being honest and unvarnished,
Mm.
right? Because I think like basically all of the travel media now is a function, an arm of travel marketing. Um, and I think it's a real shame that so much of what gets published is gloss, um, and sort of glosses over the less savoury aspects of. So like like the example I always reach for is if you imagine Machu Picchu, a marketing photograph of Machu Picchu, you see the ruins completely deserted with wisps of cloud over the.
Mm.
Right, it's just not. It's nonsense. It has no bearing on what the actual experience is for a typical visitor. So just by putting a truthful picture of Machu Picchu on our page and saying this is what you can expect, right?
Mm.
We're already doing something radical.
Mm.
Um, and then in the text we will explain like this is what the reality of this is, and so on and so on. Unfortunately, not a lot of people read in that level of detail. Now we know that the average time on our pages is a matter of minutes if we're lucky. Um, so there are other things we can do as well. So, like for example, we like to get people into email lists. If you come to our site looking for information on trekking in Peru, we can get you into an email sequence, and then we've got your attention a little bit more, and then we can say over a series of emails like, okay, cool, you're going to go to Machu Picchu, that's totally fine. We won't hold that against you. Here's what you need to know. And then in the subsequent 6 or 7 or whatever emails, we're going to give you loads of different interesting alternatives.
Hmm.
So it's marketing really.
Mm.
So we're using the tools of marketing to try and sort of nudge and shift that awareness a little
Mm.
bit.
I mean, I love the way you describe it there about kind of giving that not necessarily the sordid side of travel, but the real side, the honest side of travel, because
Right.
and people are going to get tired of me banging on about CNN when I was there because I've done it a few times in these interviews
Yeah.
now. But that was kind of the idea behind CNN Go as well, was to not give that varnished, polished look, which
Yeah.
is, as you rightly say, it's there because it's there to sit alongside advertising and that sort of thing,
Yeah.
and to
Yeah.
appeal to people that might pay some money to the publisher.
Yeah.
Um, and we found it really worked. We found that was a refreshing, fresh voice in this sea of beautiful yoga
Mm.
places and
Right.
five-star
Yeah.
breakfast and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was, like I say, even for a writer, well, especially for a writer, as writers, I think we really enjoyed it because
Mm-hmm.
it allowed you to suddenly not feel like you were encumbered by these
Yeah.
expectations from on
Yeah.
high and all that sort of stuff, and you could actually
Yeah.
just write
Yeah.
what you felt.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how's that going though? Have you had any good feedback about that? Like you say, maybe people aren't dwelling on your pages for long enough to really kind of enjoy it. But what are some of the interesting stats or metrics that you use to govern success or to change
Well,
direction if you need to?
yeah. I mean, as I say, like we one of the virtues of being the kind of scale that we are, is we can kind of fly under the radar a bit. We just make what we can make niches work for our business model. So we do okay out of these niches. If we're never going to be a huge business, we're never going to be a VC of interest to a VC looking
Hmm.
to invest in a big scale up, and that's fine with us. But we've got dozens of destinations, and for each one we've got several partners, usually about 2 or 3 partners for each destination, and we send them a lot of value. We send them good quality traffic, and good quality booking inquiries,
Hmm.
and our advertisers really value what we can do for them. Um,
And I know you have kind of a stable of writers that you use to produce these guides and the content when you need it. Is that kind of a hermetically sealed off little
No.
stable, or are you kind of, and can writers help you find new destinations and new like where does the decision come? Is it the client that comes and the advertiser, or do the writers sometimes help you decide to produce a new guide?
So that's, yeah, there's a few things there. So in terms of what we commission, that normally comes from us. We look at so we already know where our gaps are. We look at what we're trying to focus on. So for the last over 12 months, we've really focused on only two themes: trekking and hiking, walking holidays, and more safari type nature type travel. And we've gone very deep in those two themes, those two categories. And we know where the key places are, the key destinations, what the market looks like, and so on. And then we go and commission. We find the advertiser last. Actually,
Right.
we ourselves know where we want to be, what we want to be looking at. Then we find the right contributor, and then we find the right partners. And then, yeah, for the authors, like I mean, I've been around the block a few times, so I kind of know the right people to ask. But we have quite a big contact list. But where we don't have the right person, it's quite easy these days to find contributors, and people are looking for work at the moment.
ChatGPT is a great contributor, isn't it?
I
Little poke there. I've seen your tirades on LinkedIn about the whole using AI to generate travel itineraries. So give us your take
yeah,
on that. I mean, it's not an unsurprising use of an AI model. I guess that, considering that it's summarizing all the content that exists out there already and giving you a nice, easily digestible snapshot.
yeah.
But it has drawbacks as well. So give us your take on this and the pros and
Okay.
cons.
So my actual position is a lot more nuanced than my LinkedIn persona position.
Right.
I mean, I'm using ChatGPT all the time, right? When it comes to the one thing that we have a hard rule against is using AI for production content. Nothing that comes from AI ever goes on. Okay, even that is a bit more nuanced. In terms of our travel guides, stuff that our readers are coming to get advice and information from, does not come from AI. We have lots of trips on our website from our partners, like itineraries and tours and so on. And quite often our partners, they don't have native English, and their content isn't always as good as it could be. And quite often, like, what you can get AI to rewrite it and make it better.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got no problem with that whatsoever. So we do use it for things like that. And I mean, we do use it in our editorial process, because what I will generally do is interrogate ChatGPT on a subject, find out what it knows, find out what is known. I mean, yeah, it's more accurate to say what is known to the internet. ChatGPT give you a window into what is already known, and then we take that to our contributors and we say, all right, what is not known? What would you disagree with? And more importantly, for our kind of editorial focus, is like, what's the counter consensus view of this particular place, or this, like Peru and Machu Picchu and all that kind of stuff. ChatGPT, and you have to really push it to give you something that's a bit against the grain, a bit non-mainstream. The algorithms and now the AI are by design, they will give you what's consensus and mainstream. And so we're asking I'll give you a great example. Literally today, we're publishing an update to our Tanzania safari guides, a guy called Philip Briggs, who's quite a well-known Africa Safari author, is doing this for us. And in the brief to Philip, we've given him, like, this is all of the stuff that the internet already knows. What we don't want to do is just replicate what every other web page has got. We don't want to say, you can do the wildebeest migration here, and this is the best time to go, and so on. And these are the sorts of wildlife that you can see, right? There's absolutely zero utility or purpose in us replicating that information and putting that on a new web page, right? That's known, that's covered, that's done. So we're saying to Philip, so you, Philip, are uniquely qualified to give some really interesting, maybe controversial takes and angles and insights and recommendations that might go against what the Tanzania safari industry and the way that it's marketed. What can we say that kind of goes against that grain? And that is the core of a brief for a contributor. So actually, in a way, AI has made that a lot easier for us, because we can sort of get that snapshot and say, okay, this is, take all of that as a given. What else? What else?
Well, you're using it in the right way. You're using it as a tool and as a filter, like you say, to see what's there. And now how can we supplement or complement what is already out there and make sure that what we're doing is unique and fresh, which sounds like a very smart way to do it.
I think, yeah. And I think people that have been using it, there was a lot of froth around this was going to make sort of content creation. People that have used, that have gone all in on that, I think have had their fingers burnt. Well, it kind of depends where you sit, right? If you care about Google's traffic, Google search, and not every public, a lot of what I'm talking about isn't universal. Like, this is important for us, but it's not necessarily the case for every publisher. But for us, Google search is very important. And we're doing the sorts of things that Google seems to want. So it's about,
because that's a risk, isn't it? I mean, do you ever think, because I do know of people who are using ChatGPT to create their content. They literally have a 3-line prompt, and ChatGPT just then writes the content. And I can't quite see how Google might be able to determine, or you have these AI detection softwares as well, and they're full of flaws and bugs, and often detect AI when there wasn't any, and stuff like that. Do you think that's a risk? Will Google or any of these big search engines be able to detect ChatGPT or AI written content in the future, and that would be a risk for publishers?
They're already on record as saying they don't care. I think they have to say that, because long term, even now, perhaps, I don't know if you can accurately detect AI written content. I've put through stuff that we know people have written through these detectors, and it often flags it up as. So there's a technical thing there, but what they most certainly are looking for, and they've got patents for this kind of stuff, which is a concept called information gain. So if you're just repeating what is all, and this has been the SEO game for the last 20 years, right? Just repeat what is already there, but make it a bit longer. Add a few graphics or whatever, make it a bit more detailed, add another 1,000 words, and but Google is now way smarter than all of that. So if you're just repeating, it doesn't matter if you're a human doing this or an AI doing this. Google's not interested. They're not gonna long term. I mean, I'm sure you see people getting boosts and short term boosts, but long term, Google's got no interest in indexing. I mean, it costs them money more than anything else. Indexing infinite amount of regurgitated existing information. So information gain is an interesting thing, but also they're looking for, and this probably is useful for your your audience for this, the key thing that they seem to be looking for is the authority and the experience of the contributor, and that can, in a documented way. It's all very well just saying I have authority and experience, but that needs to be reflected in what they call the knowledge graph. Google needs to have understood that and recognized that. And there's a very easy way of testing this. You just Google your own name. And this, depending on the size, the prominence of this, if you Google famous people, you get lots of prominent featured results and snippets, and that's because Google knows exactly who that person is, and it's pulling in lots of information from all sorts of different places about that person, right? If you Google my name, it hasn't got a clue. It doesn't know who I am, right? But lots of our contributors, and in fact, one of the things we look for is how well known they are to these platforms. And I mean, it's a bit murky, really. It's a bit like kind of how the sausage gets made. It's not always that palatable, but we care about. It's quite hard for me to justify commissioning from unknown writers. We need to know that these people have documented authority.
And that's because Google is such a big part of your model. Basically, you need to be on Google's side. And I've never heard of this knowledge. What do you call it? Knowledge graph or something?
Knowledge graph. Yeah. So it's really easy
if they know somebody is an expert in something and they're writing about that topic again, they're essentially going to trust them as a reputable source of information.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And there are various ways that people can get into the knowledge graph, and it's mostly just about being present and being visible and being consistent in your themes. So I think my advice to people would be, and I mean, again, this isn't universal. My advice to people in this narrow world that I and Horizon Guides operates in, the advice is like, you've got to be prominent in these places. Google has to recognize your prominence. So that's like, there's not a lot, you can't really game that. You just have to write for other prominent places consistently.
But I imagine it's probably more important if you're doing what you're doing, and Google is a big part of it. If you're setting out to become a blogger or an influencer in your own right, and you want to be, whereas if you just have a great story idea because you happen to have been at the right place at the right time, then you're probably going to get that idea itself will be of value to BBC or the New York Times or whoever it might be. So
that's exactly what I mean. What I'm talking about is far from universal. Like other, like real publishers, we all we do, and I mean, like our business depends on Google search traffic. Now that clearly isn't the case for other bigger, more mainstream publishers. But for those that do care, like where your work is part of a kind of search or demand capture kind of operation, these are the things that increasingly people would be looking for.
And I remember when we spoke last time, or when we exchanged emails a couple of years back, I think you mentioned how a change in Google's algorithm, or maybe it's something to do with COVID, saw your traffic take a big dip and kind of the business was affected. I mean, it's like it's a tough little world you inhabit, isn't it? When it's so dependent on
and it's terrible, and it's like, and it does take a big toll on your mental health, like the ups and downs. And very recent, I mean, particularly in the last year or so, Google's have been all over the place, and so is our traffic, up and down and up and down. And in the end, you have to kind of stop paying daily, weekly attention to it, because otherwise it drives you crazy. But yeah, so like it's important for us to get lots of our users into email lists.
I was going to
So
say, is
we
there any way you can offset for it? And I guess an email list, something that you own like that, is one way of
exactly.
trying to
Yeah,
mitigate against those changes.
yeah.
Because a big thing recently was this, what do they call it? The useful content,
Right.
the
Yeah.
useful content update,
Yes.
and I think it gets
Helpful
helpful
content. Yeah.
content update, which is
Yeah.
also kind of, I think, getting to what you were talking there about
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
information gain and just making sure that there's useful stuff being published
Yeah.
and it's not all just getting regurgitated and kind of
Exactly.
cannibalized and going around and around the same
Yeah.
circles kind of thing. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it sounds
Yeah.
like what you're doing though is a great way of doing that. Have you got
Yeah.
what's coming next? I mean, is and you probably don't take pictures very often, I guess. You reach out yourselves to writers once you know you've got
Exactly.
a
Yeah.
guide coming up. But how do you said earlier you know where you want to go next in terms of a guide? What determines where you want to go next?
Um, I mean, we just got a good sense of our part of the travel industry. So like it's generally kind of long haul, multi-day experiential type stuff. Um, and there's not an infinite number of activities that people do. So the criteria is there do enough people do this, because otherwise it's not worth us doing it.
Mm.
So there's not a vast number of things for us to cover. So we our kind of strategy is to go theme to theme and be as thorough and as in depth as we can. So we've kind of done trekking and walking holidays. We're kind of doing safari, and then we'll probably get into things like with cycling. We've got quite a lot of stuff on cycling type holidays. We
So
quite like
does this
to.
involve a lot of research, sort of kind of SEO keyword research and all that sort of stuff, or is it just a feel for what you want to do?
It's yeah, we don't do that. I mean, I say like for SEO is the core of our business model, but I've always said like we don't really do SEO. Like we don't use the tools and the optimization and the technical stuff. We like we use our intuition a lot and our knowledge. Like as I've been in this industry for a long time now, and we just know like where there's a market, there's a, a demand.
Mm.
That's all we need to know, really. But if we then go into like the traditional SEO tactical stuff, all you're doing is doing what 1,000 people have already done before you.
Mm.
And if a tool is telling me a keyword, then it's already told every other user of the same keyword.
Mm.
And
And I guess this gets back to demand capture versus demand generation again. So
well,
yeah.
yeah. Like we just don't like. I think the reason that we've had longevity in our model with search is because we've not been playing the game really. Like search is we depend on it, but we don't play the SEO game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where people get unstuck is where you're optimizing for things, and then all it takes is an algorithm update, and you're in trouble.
I've often thought every time you see all these SEO pundits start talking, if you just watch what they say over a long enough period, all it comes down to is producing good content. Basically, if you just produce good content, good stories that people want to read and share, that's kind of the SEO game in a nutshell, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can take all those little details and word counts and whatever, but
and I think it's been quite surprisingly how the people that do SEO generally aren't like media-minded, content-minded people. It's marketing. It's not publishing. So I think that's kind of where we've navigated our course, and it's kind of sort of worked for us.
Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, I want to just touch on outbounding, which is that still alive? Is that still going? Because I kind of liked it as an idea. It's kind of like Reddit, but for travel content. Is that kind of a good summary?
Yeah.
And I think
basically.
I never quite got how you would make money out of it, which might be where
No,
the
that was
problem
our
was.
problem.
Yeah. But it's kind
That's
of a
our
nice
problem.
idea, and I did jump on it just before the call, and it's still there, isn't it? There's still kind of
It's still
stuff there.
there. It's not been very well moderated for quite some time.
Mm,
So there's quite a lot of stuff on there that shouldn't be there. We've the only reason we've not pulled the plug, well, partially because there's still some really good stuff on there
mm,
from back in the glory days. But also we do think, like my co-founder and me, the guy that built it originally, we can see a sort of future, a need for it, especially in this kind of everything we've been talking about. Like I really do think there could be a use for a human verified, human written, just content worth reading
mm.
that's not been not robo slop.
Because it's a
But
nice library of good travel stories, I guess, isn't it?
exactly, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But um, community building is very hard. You've got to be dedicated and focused, as I'm sure you know yourself.
Mm.
Community building is very hard if it's not your sole focus. And the business model we'd never really defined what the business model should be for that.
Mm.
So maybe in the future, when we've got abundant spare time on our hands, we can pick it back up.
Yeah.
But,
Well, there's always room for good ideas, but you've got to kind of execute it as well and stay on
exactly,
it. And yeah, but I'm glad it's
exactly.
not dead because yeah, it's a little bit, some of my things as well. I've refused. I just call them dormant, not dead, because I'm never
Yeah,
going to.
yeah, yeah,
There
yeah,
might be another opportunity in the
yeah,
future. But
yeah, yeah,
Matt, thanks very much. We're kind of pretty much out of time now, so it's really good to
yeah,
catch up. Best of
yeah.
luck with everything. I know you've got you're quite busy. Sounds like you've got stuff going on anyway, and more guys coming up.
Yeah.
Horizonguides.org, is it?
.com.
.com,
Horizonguides.com.
horizonguides.com.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, it was outbounding.org or something, wasn't it?
.org.
So
Yeah, 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 yeah.
horizonguides.com. Really
Yeah.
nice website. I clicked around some of the things. How many guys have you got up on there now? How many?
Oh, I don't know really. It's not in the hundreds.
Right. It's a
Less
few though.
than that.
Mm,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
good stuff.
yeah. No, it's going good, and we'll keep going. We'll keep going. We'll see what Google throws at us.
Yeah, yeah, that's what you got to do, isn't it? Yeah, I think we're all kind of
Yeah,
feeling that a little
yeah,
bit. Anyway, Matt, I'll let you
yeah.
go. Take care, mate, and we'll catch up
Okay,
again
James.
soon, maybe. Yeah,
Thanks very much.
thanks a
Yeah.
lot.
Bye. Bye.